back to the NCMU podcast, where we are committed to helping raise up the next generation of nerd culture missionaries and ministers. We thank you guys for stopping by and hanging out with us today. We have a really great conversation today. Myself, Mark, one of your hosts, is joined by none other than the legendary EagleGarrett. Eagle, welcome in to the podcast, my friend.
Hey, it's good to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored.
Yeah. You know, you have... you're a family man, you're a full-time creator, you have all the things. So you have a lot, you have a lot of things competing for your time. So it does not it does not go missing. I mean, like, I don't miss the fact that it's really awesome that you decided to set aside some time and hang out with us today to be on the NCMU podcast. So want to let you know I really appreciate that. Now, I know a little bit about you because I've kind of been in your sphere. We've had a conversation before. I've watched some of your streams, even though I will argue that New World's not the best MMO till I am blue in the face. I would love for our community of people who are listening to the show to get to know you a little bit. So do me a favor, just tell us a little bit about your background, what has led up to you being on the NCMU podcast here.
Yeah, so man, it was a little over 7 years ago. I was basically making the decision to start live streaming for the first time, and of course, leading up to that, it's a big long story, but the really, really short, condensed version is that for some years, ever since college, I had people in my life telling me like, "Yo, you should check out live streaming," because I was doing YouTube stuff. I was making videos, and back then there was not really a direction other than just trying to make videos that I thought may have a potential to go viral. You know what I mean? Just doing fun stuff, sketches and vlogs and things that I enjoyed. But through college, it kind of, I kind of got off of content creation as far as time, allotment was. Like, I just didn't have a lot of time to continue on. So it was sporadic. And through that period of time, people kept saying, you should look at live streaming. You should look at live streaming. And I was just like, I'm more of a video guy, Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't until I had multiple people in my life tell me I should check out live streaming over the course of, 3 or 4 years that finally got to the point where I was having a conversation with a friend, and they were telling me about a game called H1Z1, which was like kind of one of the first real big battle royale games. It's one of the big battle royale games that kind of like launched that genre forward.
Yeah, it's kind of like a horror themed sort of like. It's got a little bit of a vibe of like Left 4 Dead, but then it also has like all of the battle royale stuff.
Yeah,
right?
In a way, yeah. It was actually, so the battle royale version of the game was kind of originally started out as just a side portion of a zombie game, like a zombie survival game. Okay. And so, but H1Z1 itself became just battle royale. So they didn't have any zombies or anything like that. You just dropped in, you looted up, and then you fought 100 other players on the map. And for me, that was a concept that I had not really wrapped my brain around back then. So battle royales had not really taken off yet. You didn't have Fortnite, you didn't have Warzone or Apex Legends or anything like that to look to. But it was the game that as a kid I always wanted. I always wanted a game where I could just drop in with a ton of other people, and like the last person standing was it, right? Sure. So my friend's telling me about this after we went to a movie, my wife and I with his wife and him, and he's telling me about this game. He's like, you should check it out, man. And I was like, well, how do I see like the full, YouTube videos are all cut up and edited. It's only the best parts. Like, how do I see the full game? Because this sounds awesome. He's like, dude, just go to Twitch and watch somebody live stream a whole session of it. And I was like, okay, that sounds fair enough. So that's what I did. Is I went to Twitch. I had never been on Twitch before. I went to Twitch and I started watching like H1Z1 players. And so 2 things happened. One, I loved the game. I thought the game looked awesome. It was right at my alley. I was like, this is it. But then the second thing happened. I really started growing an interest in live streaming like I never thought I would before. I'd always kind of brushed it off to the side, even though all these people had been kind of telling me, you should look into this. You should look into this. And the more I watched Twitch, I started watching Twitch like regularly after that. I was hanging out on Twitch. I was hanging out in chats. I got involved in communities, and I saw this community aspect to Twitch that I never ever saw on YouTube. YouTube's got community in the comments and things like that, but I mean, it's not it's not like a live stream. It's not like you can go hang out with the same people every day. And
it's like the relationship aspect of like you felt like you were connecting with the same people, the same creators, and really beginning to develop at some level relationship, and that's what was kind of drawing you into the live streaming. Exactly.
That's what it was. And the thing about it was for me, and this goes all the way back to, and we'll get into this here in a minute, I'm sure when we start talking more about like the calling and faith element of what I'm doing in content creation in general. But like, for me, this goes all the way back to high school when I had a group of my friends got together and we formed a rock and roll band. And so it wasn't like we weren't just like a worship team or anything like that. We were just writing music, having fun, doing covers of songs, and then of course doing our own stuff and recording albums. And we were having fun with it. And we were kind of trying to do the whole like, high school rock band music thing. Mm-hmm. But we were all believers and are all believers. And so we were like, let's have fun with this. And back then this whole like calling developed where God really kind of opened up an interesting perspective on the best way to reach the lost, which was different than what I had always thought it was going to be. And so it started back then with this idea of like building a community around something that people could all relate to and all were interested in, a common interest. And then using that as a way to build a relationship, a more personal relationship with somebody where you have the opportunity to have deeper conversations.
Yeah, you can enter into those spiritual conversations because you've heard the right? Like you're playing the game that they enjoy. And for you, when it came to, at least what I've seen from the YouTube stuff, it wasn't just, hey, I'm playing a game that you like, but you have created a tremendous amount of like genuinely valuable and helpful content that people are like, because people come to creators for different reasons, but one of the things that I think makes you really unique is it's not just humorous stuff, right? You make a tremendous amount of stuff that people like, they want, like you're like helping them in many ways, and I think that's really cool.
Well, thank you, and that's one of the things that like I find that if like you can provide value to a person, that's not it's no strings attached. When I do YouTube videos or when I was making music back in my rock band, like there was no strings attached for somebody to come listen to our music. Back then it was MySpace, and we would post our our newest songs on MySpace, a MySpace player, and like you could come listen for free. Like we were giving away music for free. We did have albums and stuff we would sell, but like it was like we weren't trying to keep people away from the content if they enjoyed it. And I mean, I could tell you all kinds of stories from the band days of opportunities we had to like minister to people, but it wasn't like, hey, we're going to give you this song, but you got to listen to me talk to you about Jesus. It was like, hey, enjoy this song that we made. You know what I mean? But people from there got interested in what we were doing. And the same thing started happening on Twitch. And the reason why I bring all that up is because I saw a level of community on Twitch that it was even greater than like what we got when we were doing like the whole, local band thing where we had a little following. But Twitch was like a way different thing because it was so much bigger. There's no borders on Twitch. It wasn't just in Oklahoma. You know what I mean? It was like, there's people from all over the world that are showing up here to hang out in a stream and talking. And it just kind of blew my mind. It was one of these things that like, I didn't fully realize this when I first started getting into it, but it was something that was immediately drawing me in and like attractive to me of this concept of a global reach potentially with your community, like being able to branch outside of your local area. And so when I started getting into Twitch, originally it was a hobby. It was for fun. Me and a couple of my friends were all kind of thinking about streaming at the same time. And so we did it together. And these are some of my best friends to this day. We were all roommates in college together. We've been gaming together since before we ever got on Twitch. And so it was like one of these cool things where the position we were all at in life, or the place we were all at in life, allowed us to all pursue this streaming thing. And so it was just a fun thing. It was kind of a competition, who could get more followers every week, who could, we would have.
Oh, that's cool. So you were doing it kind of in the context of you're establishing and building a community. literally in the context of a community of friends and relationships that you already had. And so you get that brotherhood, that camaraderie, that little bit of competition that goes into it, which really does spur you on, right? You need stuff like that in order to get you through the 3 weeks that you didn't stream to anybody, and it was really hard, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it was definitely longer than 3 weeks. But yeah, that's exactly what it is. I mean, like, ever since college, these same guys and I would hold little competitions. We had a competition with one of my roommates where we would just have 1v1s in Halo, and we would play Halo Reach, and we would like do 1v1 sniper battles or whatever the the weapon of choice was. But we would 1v1, and then whoever won would be the champion until the next time we played. And so we just had bragging rights, but it turned into, he eventually went and bought like a plastic like wrestling world champion belt, and he said, all right, every time somebody wins, we're going to pass the belt back and forth, and then you'll keep it on your side of the room in college, and it was
awesome.
Yeah, it was so much fun. So that's what drove initially, I think the fun and the camaraderie, the community between me and just my core group of friends on Twitch. But what ended up happening, this is the crazy part about it, I didn't know how quickly, what would happen with Twitch, how long does it take, but I really grew a love and a passion for streaming, the process of live streaming and doing content that's like off the cuff. You can't edit it. It's not, it's not perfect.
It's not polished, sure.
It's
trimmed,
not polished.
None of that stuff, yeah.
Exactly. It's raw, it's real, and it's just whatever happens. And so I really started growing a love for that, but I also didn't realize that we were going to start meeting people pretty early on. Now, our community, it took a while. I think it was 6 months of streaming pretty consistently before I reached 100 followers on Twitch. So that's 6 months. I mean, that's a long time. Knowing what I know now, I think I could probably do that faster, but I just didn't know a lot, back then. Like there's
nobody did. I mean, let's just be real. 7 years ago, I mean, I don't know, maybe 8 now. I think it was like last time I talked to you was like 7 years ago. And so, I mean, it was kind of the Wild West, right? Like, people were grabbing a Xbox webcam and throwing it on their TV stand to stream from, and nobody really knew, what was good, what wasn't good, how to grow, how not to grow, right? It was all very, tip of the spear, very experimental, and not just for a Christian to be in the space, but for anybody to be in the space doing it. So I love that. Okay, so go ahead and continue with where we were in your thought there. Kind of like trying to figure out how to grow. It took you a couple of months, 6 months to hit 100 followers.
Yeah, 6 months to hit 100 followers. And I think I was playing Rocket League at the time when we did hit our 100th follower. It was like a big deal, and we celebrated. We were just having a good time. I had a full-time job, so this was just something literally, I did this about 3 times a week in the evenings. And on the days that I streamed, I would come home, I'd eat dinner with my wife, and then she knew that I was going to stream for, a few hours before I went to bed to get ready for work the next day. And during this period of time, we didn't have any kids or anything, so it was literally just her and I. So we had, set aside time that was, date night and us to hang out. And then she was really, really supportive in allowing me this time to have this hobby, a few times a week. And I have to give a shout out to her as well, because I probably wouldn't be streaming today if it wasn't for her, because it was the Christmas of 2016 that she gave me my first webcam and a USB microphone as a gift, because she knew I'd been talking to her about this streaming thing. Like, I really want to try out this streaming thing. And once she gave me those things, I didn't have any excuses. You know what I mean? Like before she gave me those items, I kind of had the excuse of like, well, I don't really have the equipment. I had a laptop. I didn't have a desktop computer. But it was a gaming laptop, which we'd purchased to do like photo editing, because we were doing photography before this period of time. And so anyway, I had the laptop. I figured it could work. I just didn't have the microphone and the camera. And once she got those things for me, I was like, okay, well, I got to put them to use now. Like, I can't let her get me these gifts and then just let them sit around. So that was the initial motivation to actually like take the steps, learn how to like get OBS set up, and then fire up the first stream. But with all that being said, that's what led me into streaming initially, was this whole kind of buildup of like years of people telling me to check it out. And then, finally that friend telling me about a game that I was interested in. And that finally got me onto the platform. So I could have been on Twitch, 3-4 years earlier if I had listened to people back then, But and that's I know that was kind of a long version, but it was actually a condensed version because there's a lot of other things that went into it. I had a cousin that was streaming for a while that was also one of the people that told me to get into it, and he talked to me more about it, and it was an interesting process. But I definitely, now that I look back on it, I see God at work in that process, because things had to line up throughout 3 or 4 year process or period of time to lead me into actually doing this, because I just myself, I didn't have any interest in it until I was shown that I should probably pay more attention,
Yeah. I think not in the same, but in a similar way, there was a couple of years leading up to what we're doing now where I think the most intriguing part of Twitch to me, and what drew me to it, was recognizing people's hunger for community and in relationship, and then recognizing that I actually shared that, like to see in me the desire to see my name go up on Hafu's stream when I subscribed, or those were the Hearthstone days. When Hearthstone was one of the biggest games, that's what I was playing. That was I was doing real small little podcast content for it, and so I remember those days though of really Twitch becoming my version of TV for the most part, right? Like I really didn't watch shows anymore. I really didn't watch many movies. I hung out in Twitch streams, and it was hanging out in those that I realized, man, there are a lot of people out there who are coming to this platform, not just because they want content, but also because they want connection, and they're looking for relationship, and they're wanting community. And I'm like, man, this is a really universal longing that the church has a very unique answer for, yet the church has no voice here, or at least very little voice. And at the time, I didn't know that you existed, right? I knew. Yeah. I think like most people that come into the space, the first people, at least over the last handful of years, that people have stumbled across in many cases were, Susie and God Squad. Those were kind of a lot of times when you Googled something, that was what came up first, and that's what you began to find. And then you began to really see more and more people in the space who were, then the Christian tag came out, you're seeing more and more of that, which is why this is called the Nerd Culture Ministry Underground, because really, it's been the more we go, the more we realize that there's this really growing and changing underbelly in the Twitch community of Christians and Christian creators who have seen Twitch not just as a chance to gain renown or to gain money, but has seen it as an opportunity to connect with people that are really looking for a relationship. And I love that that's part of your story. So tell me a little bit about this. Tell me a little bit about the discernment process, because you said I was streaming a couple nights a week and working full time.
Yeah.
You and your wife were doing photography, but there came a point at some point that you said, I think I'm supposed to just do this. And that is a hard decision to make. And I'm sure that decision did not come lightly. I'm sure you weren't like one day, you were like, you know what, honey, I'm going to quit and just make YouTube and Twitch stuff full time. I'm sure there was a long or an intense, discernment process that went into that. So tell me a little about the discernment process, not maybe when you started, but when you really said, I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the discernment process was something that it came later into the streaming, because when I first started, I loved the aspect of community. I loved that drew me in, but I didn't come to the full realization of what that meant until later in to my streaming journey. Because when I started, it was really my hobby. It was like where it was my creative outlet, and there's a whole nother story that we could get into that probably we shouldn't for time's sake. But the main thing is that my job, I had a creative job before. So I was doing website management, and I was doing graphic design. I was doing video production assisting. And then I was also, running social media accounts and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so you had your foot in the social media marketing world, in the video editing world, in cameras and equipment and microphones and recording.
Yes.
You already were kind of like learning that stuff professionally.
Yeah. And the thing is like, you know, I've been drawn to that stuff from an early age. I think I got into graphic design when I was like 12, and I started doing graphic design. My first job was I got paid $20 to design a campaign brochure for a city councilman. And I designed it, and that was the brochure that went and got put on everyone's door, and he won. So hopefully it was good enough, I guess. But
yeah. Listen, man, if you had been on Fiverr, your account would have blown up back then.
Maybe so. Yeah,
all the local politicians be hiring you. You know,
that's right. But I look back and I see how God has like given me this interest and this passion for that type of, for media type of stuff, right? And so I've learned little bits here and there, but when I got into streaming, it was really my creative outlet, because the job I had at the time, when I got into that position, my first boss was like not really a boss, he was a leader. So he's the kind of guy that can motivate you and inspire you and like get you to like really push into the creative. We had a change of leadership though. He ended up getting another job, and we had another boss come in, and the style was a little bit different. And so the creative liberties that I had been given before, where that was, my job was my creative outlet. That's where I was putting all my energy and focus into creating and using that creative energy to try to like come up with new ideas and stuff. It was kind of taken away a little bit because it was not really, I was given the same liberties. It was like, no, let's do it this way. Mm-hmm. And it got to the point where I started to become just, like, okay, like I'll do the work that I was asked to do rather than coming up with these new ideas. And so I really, for a while, I struggled because I went through this period of time of almost like, not that I didn't have an identity, but it was like I just, in my creative, area of my life, I just didn't have a good outlet. Yeah. And so that's what another reason why like streaming, drew me in. So that's where I was putting all of my creative energy outside of work. At work, I was just doing what I was told to do. And then I'd come home and I got to make up all this cool stuff for the stream. Well, what ended up happening was I initially didn't have any, idea. I thought it'd be cool if this thing became something someday, but I just enjoy doing it. So I'm just going to keep doing it and have fun with it. But God has an interesting way of, when he wants you to do something, he won't leave you alone about it. Like when he wants you to do something, you know what I mean? Like I get that. If he wants you to do something specific, he's not going to leave you alone about it. And he's also, this is something I've noticed throughout my life in different areas, is that he almost opens doors as you come up to the door. If you're not sure where you're supposed to go, but you are seeking him out, you are seeking out his will for your life. He's going to almost like open the door a little bit. You know what I mean? Like just, or make it a very like easy. When you come up to a hurdle, it's almost like the jump isn't as hard as you think it's going to be. And so it doesn't mean everything's easy. I'm not saying everything is easy in the process, but it just is a smooth process whenever you're like following the will of God in your life. Everything goes smoother, even when you run into difficulties. And so it was one of those things where the stream started growing. It started out slow, 6 months to get to 100 followers. But I started having people come into the stream that were extremely supportive of what we were doing, to the point where, and not just supportive, like showing up and watching and hanging out with me and stuff like that, playing games with me. We met a lot of people early on that are still in the stream to this day. They're like OGs that we gamed together back in H1Z1, and back in the early Rocket League days and stuff like that. And these guys and girls are still people that I talk to on a regular basis that I only met through Twitch. But the thing about it is, this community started building, and people were really supportive of the stream when I was like first starting out, very, very small. But even to the point of like financially supportive, and the thing about it is, there was no way for me to leave a full-time job unless it made sense financially as well, because, I'm married, like we have a mortgage on our house. We've got bills, I'm not going to take a step that's going to be unwise. You know what I mean?
Hey, can I just say real quick? Let's just pause real quick here. There's someone listening who needs to hear that, right? There's someone listening who needs to hear that you need to take care of your family first. You need to take care of your bills first. You need to not lose your house. You need to be able to keep your apartment. I think there is this mentality of sort of like burn the ships when it comes to things like this sometimes. And it's like, nope, I'm going to quit my job. I'm all in. And there is a time and a place for that. But what I hear you saying is, hey, we moved slow because I wanted to make sure I was listening to the heart of God, but I also wanted to operate in wisdom when it came to like the very firm realities that God had just placed in my life in terms of bills and school loans and whatever else it was that we had to make sure that we're covered. I love that.
Yes, and that is, and I'm glad you highlighted that, because it is very important. That is something I see people make the mistake of a lot, and there's this idea of like, I want to go full force into something, and I want to give it my all, and I think if I give it my all, I will reap the benefits of whatever it is, right? The problem is that there's a set of steps you have to take in order to give something your all, and it doesn't come immediately. You can't just like go, like you said, you can't just go and quit your job. If you're listening right now and you're thinking about quitting your job and you have zero experience in the streaming field, or maybe you have a little bit, maybe you've been streaming off and on for the last couple of years, but it's never been consistent. There's a lot of stuff you have to do before you can quit that job, because you have to put your family first. You've got to take care of the financial side of things. And so that was one of those things that like, I even in my prayers and stuff, when streaming started picking up, I started telling God, I said, Lord, like, if this is something you want me to do, as we're building these relationships, and this is another thing I need to mention really quick, is that, when I got into streaming, I did not get into it initially to, at least in my mind, I did not get in initially to like, share my faith and talk to people about Jesus and stuff like that. I was literally just gaming, hanging out with my friends, having a good time. And a community was building, which was super awesome. And I thought, well, through those interactions, maybe if, somebody shoots me a DM or whatever, we'll have an opportunity to open up that conversation. But I never, in the very, very beginning, I never had this idea of like, I'm going to be super, super bold in my faith. And every stream is going to have a prayer. Every stream, we're going to take every opportunity we have to, like, if questions come up or people want to talk about Jesus, or they have questions about the Bible, or they want to, talk about if God exists. A lot of people shy away from that in streams. And early on, I thought that's kind of what you had to do, because I just didn't know, I thought nobody's going to want to watch a Christian streamer talk about his faith, because there's not anybody else doing that other than, like you mentioned earlier, Susie and God Squad was like one of the first streams I found where people were like actually doing that, which was a big inspiration to me. But in that process, God started really like working on my heart, saying, hey, you're doing this thing. Why are you not, like, why am I not a bigger part of this? I'm a big part of your life. Why am I not a big part of your content? Because you're putting content out there for people. You're meeting a lot of people. Isn't that what you've always wanted to do, is have an opportunity to share your faith, which it was. And so I went through this period of time where I was really nervous, and this was before ever looking at going full time. But I realized, what, if I'm not willing to give God the glory in this, and I'm trying to keep this little thing for myself, then one, I don't think it's going to succeed at all. But two, even if it did succeed, it would be the wrong kind of success, because if it succeeded, but I was holding back on my faith, I was holding back Jesus from people, which is the number one most important thing. It doesn't matter whether you get 1 million views or 100 million views. If you're not willing to shine the light of Christ through your life, if you're a believer, you say you believe in Jesus as the Son of God, died on the cross, rose again 3 days later for the forgiveness of sins, right? And you fully believe that, but you're not willing to be open about that, especially when the opportunities are presented to you. Mm-hmm. Then it's kind of like, well, what are you doing? Like you're missing the call. Now there is something to be said. Some people they have in their rules on their stream, like, hey, no religious discussion, no political discussion. They want to keep it very even keeled so they don't offend anybody or whatever. Yeah. But I understand that they're more about the content and stuff like that, but it's like, well, if you have this opportunity to have a massive reach, you need to go ahead and be who you truly are. And some people may not like that. It's not like we've never had people come in the chat that don't like the fact that I believe in Jesus. You know what I mean? Like, but that's okay, because I may be one of the few interactions they have with somebody that does. And even if they don't like the fact that I believe in Jesus, the reality is that if they walk away from that conversation thinking, well, man, that guy was really nice to me, even though I was being a jerk to him, that's going to stick out in their mind later on down the road, potentially, right? It's planting seeds. And so like, anyway, the point I'm trying to make is, this whole, process of getting, realizing that it's a calling in my life was a slow building process. But once God really got a hold of my heart and changed my perspective and said, it doesn't matter whether you grow or not, but if you really love me and you really want to share the gospel with people, then don't be one of those people that has a no religious talk rule in your chat. You know what I mean? Let
engage
people
with that. Sure.
Engage with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Exactly. And it may be a little bit controversial in the world's eyes, but that's okay. There's all kinds of controversy going on. This is the right type of controversial. Jesus was a controversial figure in his day, right?
Absolutely.
And so, but it was the right kind of controversy. It was people being having controversy about the fact that you're supposed to love your enemy, which is not what, you're supposed to turn the other cheek, not eye for eye. There's all these different things that Jesus kind of shook up the meta, so to speak, of the day. And so anyway, the point is once he got a hold of my heart there, I started being bold. And I remember like the first time I ever did a stream where I thought one of the things that he really put on my heart is I want you to pray at the beginning of every stream and give the rest of that stream to him. Right. And so I was so nervous because I already had a little community. I already had people watching, some of which I knew for a fact were not, Christians. And so I was like, man, I'm about to lose all 10 of the viewers that I have. They're going to be gone. But the reality is that we went ahead and, I just did it. You just had to go for it. And what I'm trying to say through all of this is it is nerve wracking. It is kind of scary to be bold in the faith publicly in a way like streaming. But if you're listening to this and you're struggling with that a little bit, let me encourage you. Do it. Take that leap of faith. Take that next step. Because from that point on, God immensely blessed the stream, and he did provide. So going back to when I said I would pray and I'd ask him, I'd say, Lord, if you really want me to do this beyond just a hobby, if you really want me to reach people in this way, make a way. Make a way financially, make a way, open doors. One of the things I'd really been praying about is I was like, back then I thought that getting a massive raid from a big streamer would be like the game changer.
That'd be the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I learned it's not. I mean, like you can get a raid by the biggest streamer on the planet and it's not going to change things that much, but you will gain some followers and you will gain some, a few people that may stick around. But I used to say like, Lord, give me an opportunity to have thousands of people in the stream. Let's just see what happens. Well, sure enough, so Tim the Tatman rated me for, 17,000 or 13,000. I'll have to go back and look. But the first time he rated me, it was like 13 or 17,000 people or something like that. And, I was playing Fortnite back in the day, and like it was this unbelievable thing that happened as I had been praying about it. But it didn't stop there because I was praying about like, give me an opportunity to have thousands of people come in here. Well, Tim didn't raid me once. Tim ended up raiding me, over the course of time. I think it was like 7 or 8 times. One of the times was with almost 90,000 viewers. And so, yeah, crazy stuff. The concept of having like 90,000 people watching me at that time, I'm doing everything I can just to like try to stay somewhat composed. You know what I mean? But like,
yeah, wild.
Yeah, it's wild stuff. But the reality is that like God continued to make a way, continued to open doors, continued to bring people in the community that wanted to support, to where like the financial side of things started getting the ballpark, the realm of like, okay, this is a possibility. And my wife and I sat down at one point and we basically talked about it and just said, okay, how much would I have to be averaging per month for me to be able to legitimately like quit my full-time job and go full-time content creation? So we came up with a number, and now she was working full-time as well. So we came up with a number that realistically with her income and then what I could bring in from content creation would work and not be an unwise decision. And so I just told the Lord, like, if you want me to do this, like allow us to at least make this much every month. Right.
Yep.
but then also I told the Lord at the time, I was like, I'm struggling though, because we got closer and closer to that goal and we started hitting that amount, like the Lord started providing. And so I told him though, I was like, I've got a full-time job, God, like what,
Sure.
this is a good job. Like, it's
thanks, but no thanks for answering my prayer.
Yeah.
Like I appreciate you answering my prayer, but I was kind of banking on the fact that you wouldn't, right?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what it was. It was like, okay, he's all this stuff is lining up. He's opening all these doors. He's providing. And I was still struggling. I was still holding back. I was still struggling with this idea of like, I'm really going to have to take this leap of faith at some point. So I told him, I said, God, I hope I'm not, I'm sorry if I'm missing it. I'm sorry if I'm super ignorant in this whole process, but I am really struggling. I'm going to need you to like slap me in the face with an answer almost. You know what I mean? Like
Gideon putting out the fleece for the second time.
It was
right?
almost kind of, yeah, it was like,
listen, you did it the first time. You want to do it twice,
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Well, and that's the thing is I was having this struggle with like, saying, well, I could stream and have a full-time job. And that way I have I've got that security net, and like, but God answered my prayers yet again. And at my job, he basically created a scenario where it's a whole nother crazy story. It really is miraculous. But basically, it was getting to the point where I felt like I couldn't take a lot of time away from streaming. And we had a big trip that was coming up in my job, and it was to go to Chile, and it was going to take me away for like a 12-day period of time that I was going to be in Chile and doing work there. And it sounds like a great opportunity. Like anybody's going to jump on that opportunity, right? But for me, I felt like, if I take 12 days off of the stream as things are really like starting to roll and like we're getting this momentum built up and stuff, I was like, I feel like this is going to really hurt the momentum we have. And so I was also in that period of time where I was like really thinking where I was going to quit my job, but I wasn't sure. And I was really holding out. So I just told my boss at the time, I said, hey, I am not going to be able to do this trip. And I want to give you enough heads up so that if you need to like have somebody fill my spot, they've got enough heads up. But I didn't want to tell them why, because I wasn't ready to quit. You know what I mean? I wasn't ready to like, and so my job didn't require me to travel or anything like that. But she did not like that very much. And so at first she was like, okay, is everything okay? And I was like, yeah, everything's fine. Like I just, for personal reasons, I'm not going to be able to do this trip. And the trip I think was going to be, the tickets were like $1,000. And I didn't want the department to be out $1,000, for me to agree to go on the trip and then get to the point where I'm like, okay, I got to quit now and turn in 2 weeks and they can't get a refund on the ticket and all this kind of stuff. So I was trying to be considerate. But it ended up going all the way to the HR department because she would not leave it alone. She kept prodding to try to see what was going on. And I understand where she was coming from, but anyway, we go to the HR department. I kind of have a sit down with her and the HR director and their boss. And like, they were basically like, hey, if you don't tell us why you can't go on this trip, then, we may have to discuss your job anyway. You know what I mean? Like it was not the greatest way to handle that in my opinion. But at that point, when I was sitting in that meeting, and my wife and I had already talked about the possibility, and she was encouraging me. She was like, babe, just do it. Like, listen, I support you. Take the leap. You know what I mean? Like God is really like making it obvious. Like she was already getting it when I wasn't.
She's seeing it. Yeah.
She was seeing it. Yeah. But when I was sitting in that meeting and we were having this conversation and they were putting me on the spot, that's when it just hit me, and God gave me that like confirmation. He slapped me in the face like I asked. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, you need help. Like here you go. And when we were in that meeting, I had that realization. Okay, I'm officially gonna quit and pursue this because this is all taking place. They want to know. Like we're gonna start out on the table. You know what I mean? And so I just told him, I said, well, the reason why I'm not going is because I may not be here when the trip happens. And I said, and I'm sorry, like I wanted to turn in an official 2 weeks. I wasn't quite ready yet. Like I was still trying to figure things out. But now that we're having this conversation, like, I just had this peace at that moment. And so I just laid it all out there. I told them like, I may not be here. And they kind of were like, oh, we're sorry. Like, like they didn't know that that's what
you were like trying to protect the budget of the company.
Yeah, I was trying to be like, have integrity in the process, but still like work up enough, courage to turn in this 2 weeks and stuff. So anyway, that was it. That was the final straw. And I turned in the 2 weeks. I think that was we had a meeting on Friday. So I came back on Monday and turned in my 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And it kind of caught everybody off guard, but like it caught me off guard as well. But that I was like, okay, he's really done what I asked, like he's really given me the I don't know, the final signal.
The kick in the butt. Yeah.
But I will tell you this, I held out as long as you possibly can. Yeah. It's so like, so it's one of those things, again, God will make a way. If it's really supposed to happen, he will line things up. Oh, and this is the other part I got to tell you guys, because this is a huge part of this. I was still nervous about money. But the day that that meeting took place, I got a call from my previous boss, who is now working at another organization. And he was basically wanting to hire me at his company, but they were in a different state. And I just told, like, we couldn't move, our whole family's in Oklahoma, like it was just not on the table. But I ended up having a conversation with him, and I just asked him, I said, well, let me give you a counter offer. What if I work remotely as a contractor, and I'll do the work you need me to do as a contractor, and this is the price that we're looking at, stuff like that. Well, we had this conversation. Well, I got confirmation that same day after the meeting took place where I quit. I got a call back from him, and he said, hey, let's do it. And it was going to provide enough money for me to not have to be nervous when God. Yeah, it was like so there's so many nuances. Like this whole story could take a couple hours if I went through all the like little details. But that's what I mean by like when God opens doors or he wants you to go a direction and you're really seeking him out, he's going to like line things up, and it's going to kind of blow your mind. Yeah. You know what I mean? In a lot of ways. And it wasn't like I wasn't struggling. I was struggling with like nervousness and doubt and all this kind of stuff. Fear was, the enemy was trying to really use fear as a foothold to hold me back from like fully pursuing what God was calling me into. But it was undeniable. And so anyway, I hope that it's a long story, but yeah, I hope it kind of answers that.
No, it does. One of the things that I've done a lot of is I've done all of these episodes for this podcast. And everybody's story is a little unique as to the point of calling, and I've had touch points with each. For me, my job, I didn't have any more I was a youth pastor, was really creative, became a different type of pastor at the same church, lost all those opportunities, started a podcast as a creative outlet that led to what we're doing now, right? I experienced the relentlessness of the Holy Spirit when he refused to let what he was calling us to next go and wouldn't let it go. I still didn't want to go, and I was still nervous about it. And, God created tension inside my relationships at work to the point that it just got, I literally was at a breaking point with my boss one day, and I went not planning to quit. And it was like, hey, I think that I'm supposed to go do something different. Granted, you were in the secular world and doing things different. One of the things that I love, and we do need to wrap up, just be respectful of everybody's time. But one of the things that I love personally about your content, Eagle, is I love that you're saying, hey, I felt like God was compelling me in to using this as gospel presence. However, what you don't do is preach or at least in my experience with you, right? You create a ton of content, YouTube videos, live streams, where you are just creating really positive, great environments where you're not really creating content for Christians. You are the quintessential Christian in the space, which I'm sure comes from your background in being in what was a secular band full of Christians, right? Because that was something, I don't know how old you are, but I think we're similar around the same age. And I remember there being Christian bands and bands that were full of Christians, and the difference that those two made in terms of the demographic they targeted with the music that they created. And in a very similar way, there are Christian streamers and there are streamers who are also Christians, and the people that they reach, the target audience, both good and both positive for lots of different reasons. But what I love how well you've done that, because there are people who, man, the allure of getting the numbers and getting the raids and getting the money is such that it lures people out of a proper witness, right?
Yeah,
and they're in the space and they're like, well, I'm not really a Christian streamer. I'm a streamer that is a Christian. And it enables them to make compromises in places that compromises ought not to be made. And what I love is you have walked that line really well, really beautifully, with a high level of integrity from all the content that I've watched from you. And you've done that really successfully, and God has blessed that. And I think there's a lot of people who are saying, man, I don't really want to be a Christian streamer. I do just want to create content. I want to entertain people, but I am a Christian that could learn a lot from the stuff that you make. And maybe they're just currently tuned in to Christian streamers, right? And they're like, I don't really want to do that. I don't really feel equipped or called, or that's my thing. I would really encourage them to check out the content that you have out here. Go hang out in your stream and stuff. I love your narrative. I love the discernment story, the doors, the relentlessness of the Spirit, the money, the your wife speaking into your life just relentlessly, being like, just do it, just trust God. Like, it's the voices in our lives, it's the wisdom from people, it's the circumstances, it's the doors open and closed, all of those things. God got your attention in so many ways. I love that. Now, as we close, one of the things we like to do is give you a chance to talk to yourself from 7 or 8 years ago, but also to talk to people who are just starting out. So what does the EagleGarrett today, 2024 EagleGarrett, know that he wishes he could hand down to 2015, 2016 EagleGarrett?
That is a great question, and thank you, by the way. I appreciate everything that you just said, and I do want to say you nailed it, because people have asked me, like, yo, are you a Christian streamer? And I tell them, well, I am, but I'm a streamer that's a Christian, and the reason why I make that differentiation is because exactly what you're talking about is that there's a lot of people that may not, if they hear Christian streamer, and I'm specifically talking about the lost. They hear Christian streamer, they may have some preconceived notions or some type of, like, animosity towards believers for some reason, maybe a past experience they had or whatever, that may turn them away before they ever have a chance to even get to know you. And I think people are called in different ways, and what God called me to was what you're talking about, which is being a content creator who's a Christian, being a streamer who's a Christian, but that being that opportunity to then reach that person. And I'm not shy about my faith on stream. I talk about it, and there have been times where we've gotten into a 3-hour conversation about, a passage of scripture or something like that. We do that, and we have read scripture on stream and things like that. But primarily, you come over and you'll see me playing games and hanging out with people and just having a good time. So if you're in a situation where you're trying to figure out what God's called you into, if He's called you to preach on stream, preach boldly. If He's called you to play games on stream but be open about your faith and share the gospel through word and deed, right? Because there's a way to share the gospel not just in what you say, but also by what you do. And so, do that boldly. If I was talking to myself from today, back 7 years ago, one, I would say, don't spend all your time just streaming. And that's why it took me 6 months to get 100 followers, because I was literally just going live and I was just hoping people ran across my stream. And nowadays there are, 3, 4, 5 times as many people streaming as there were when I started streaming, maybe even more than that. It's very, very hard to grow if you're not putting content on other platforms. And this has been something that people have been talking about for a while. But I would say, going back to back 7 years ago, we had what we have today, I would be really focused on pulling the best moments from my stream and making, edited short form content. So TikTok, YouTube Shorts, things like that. Those are huge right now. But also they have the most potential. So if you're really trying to grow and you're really trying to do this, you feel like God's called you into it, you want to have the maximum amount of reach. You want to have the maximum amount of community building potential and things like that. Take your streams, have more planned out things that you're going to do in the stream. Maybe a cool aspect to the stream. Recently we've been playing a game where you can get team kills if you on accident. You can kill your teammates if you're not careful.
Is that Helldivers?
It's Helldivers too. Yeah.
Sure. I've heard stories.
Yes. And it's a great game. Don't judge it based on the name, by the way. But but it was one of those things where it's like, Helldivers 2 is this game where if you're not careful, you can throw an airstrike down, and your teammates can be running across the airstrike, and you can blow them to smithereens. And it's like, oh, sorry guys, So I literally have been putting a little counter above my webcam that's friendly fire kills. So anytime I accidentally kill my teammate, we just chalk it up. And my goal is to have as little as possible. I asked my stream like beforehand, like how many do you think I'm going to get? Some people thought I was going to, get above 40, which I was like, come on guys, we're not that bad. But the point is like have some aspect or something that you're doing that is unique and different. And then try to highlight the moments of your personality that shine through. Don't worry about trying to get the greatest clips, because unless you're a pro player, like unless you're legitimately, playing 8 to 12 hours a day, one specific game, and you're trying to go pro in that game, people, good clips are a dime a dozen. But having clips that have personality, that really highlights who you are, highlights an element of your personality or something funny. Those are going to be the more effective ones in most cases, especially for somebody like me. I'm in my 30s, and my reaction time can't keep up with some of the younger kids. Yeah,
I feel that in my bones. I feel deep in my bones, man. Yeah,
yeah. I'm not bad, but I definitely know I'm not going to be hitting clips like some of these guys. So it's like, I don't, you can post some cool clips if you have them from time to time, but also post like funny clips, post personality driven clips. And then the other thing I would say is give yourself time for that content. If you're trying to stream every waking hour that you have to stream, your content as a whole is going to suffer, because you're not going to have time to make those shorts and to make that content. Some of the most successful streamers right now on the platform, we're talking about like the top guys, most viewership and everything. Their strategy, because a lot of times when I see somebody blow up and start to get a lot of attention, I'll do like a little case study, just a personal little case study on them. I'll go and see what they're doing, and they have done that. They have really focused on TikToks and YouTube Shorts. They've taken their content from their stream and turned it into edited videos. And so if you're, as far as like just strictly streaming success is concerned, that's what I would say.
Yeah.
You gotta focus on that stuff. Have fun streaming, but limit your stream time so that you can have all the time off stream you need to do that stuff too.
Yeah, so maybe if you're going to stream for 20 hours a week, maybe stream for 15 or 10 hours a week, and spend the other chunk 5 to 10 hours a week giving your space to edit. And really view that when you go live on Twitch, this is not the opportunity for people to find you. This is the opportunity for you to engage with the people who have found you. And if you're going to give half your time to help people find you as well. Which isn't going to happen when you click the go live button in most cases. At least not anymore. Not in the world that we live in today.
Not today.
Well, Eagle, I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I appreciate your insights. And I think that folks who listen through this episode will get a lot of really, really helpful stuff in terms of their discernment process, but also in terms of their feeling of calling to this and what that's going to take. And then also just a really solid practical tip. I know that we'll put some links in the description of this episode and in the notes if you want to go check out EagleGarrett's content. And I would say this too, guys. I talked to him before we started recording. There is a wealth of knowledge that he has about how to run your stream as a small business, and how to set up your organization as a whole, and how to move beyond just a guy or gal hitting go live. And I'm sure that they could probably come to your live streams and stuff and be able to poke and prod at that a little bit, and help you download some of that information to them whenever you're able, because I know that for a lot of people that is a big obstacle, and we don't have time to get into it today, and that's not really the intention or the point of this podcast. There are YouTube videos out there that do that. But by the way, go subscribe to Eagle's YouTube right now, because I don't want to spoil anything. I'm just saying that there may be some helpful content coming out in the not too distant future that would help with exactly those things, like exactly what I'm referring to here. So be sure to check that out. Once again, Eagle, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate you.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute blast, and love the conversation. I think this is a fantastic show, fantastic service to content creators across the board. So I'm really honored to be a part of it. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, as for me and for EagleGarrett and for all of us at the NCMU podcast, thank you for tuning in with us, and be sure to come back for next episode.